All right, so let's dive into these Lou Elizondo interviews you shared.
Okay.
Talk about a deep dive. We're talking about the former head of the Pentagon's AATIP program.
Right.
That's the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, for those who haven't encountered the acronym before.
Right.
Elizondo's been making some pretty big waves talking about UAPs.
He has.
And it seems like he's carefully choosing, like, every word.
Absolutely. What makes these interviews so compelling is that Elizondo walks this line between caution and candor. He's not throwing around wild stories, you know?
Right.
He's speaking from a place of deep knowledge and experience, which makes what he does share all the more impactful.
Right, like when he talks about seeing videos that would make your hair stand on end.
Yep.
And it's not just one isolated video, either. He paints a picture of this almost constant influx of new data stuff happening every week that pushes the boundaries of what we think is possible. It really challenges the narrative of isolated incidents, doesn't it?
Exactly. One of Elizondo's key takeaways is this shift from thinking about UAPs as isolated events to recognizing a pattern of consistent and frequent encounters happening on a global scale.
Right.
This isn't just about blurry photos anymore. We're talking sophisticated sensor data, pilot testimonies, multiple forms of evidence converging to suggest something significant is happening.
And the technology he describes. Elizondo mentions pilots like Commander Fravor during the 2004 Nimitz encounter.
Right.
The Tic Tac incident, chasing these objects that are clocked at speeds that he can barely comprehend, let alone achieve.
That's a great example because it highlights the gap between our current understanding of physics and what these UAPs seem capable of.
Yeah.
Elizondo brings up the SR-71 Blackbird, the fastest plane we've ever built,
Right.
and how even that experiences intense heat and friction at its top speed. These UAPs are operating at speeds that dwarf that, and seemingly without those limitations.
It's mind-boggling.
Yeah.
And it's not just the speed. Elizondo talks about how these UAPs seem to know they're being watched.
Yes.
Almost like they're aware of our presence and even mirroring our movements.
There's a chilling example he gives where a UAP actually orients itself towards Commander Fravor's jet during that Tic Tac encounter.
Wow.
Whether you interpret that as curiosity or something else, it suggests a level of awareness and potentially even intelligence that's both fascinating and unsettling. This is where things move beyond just observing lights in the sky. We're talking about potential interactions with something that's actively engaging with us.
It makes you wonder, like, what are they trying to tell us? Especially with Elizondo's comments about the variety of shapes.
Right.
It's not all Tic Tacs. We're talking about triangular craft, cylindrical ones, even orbs of light seemingly interacting with each other. It sounds like something out of science fiction, but Elizondo is adamant that this is very real.
And Elizondo suggests that those shapes aren't random. They could hold clues to the capabilities and even the origin of these crafts.
Wow.
He hints at the possibility of some shapes being redacted in official reports, maybe to avoid revealing our knowledge of foreign technology.
Right.
It makes you wonder what else might be out there that we haven't seen or that's being kept under wraps.
It's a lot to take in, right? Especially when you consider what Elizondo says about the need for greater transparency.
Oh, yeah.
And how those in power have often tried to downplay or dismiss the significance of UAPs.
He's very critical of attempts to write off these encounters as just air clutter or misidentified objects.
Right.
Elizondo argues that this is an issue that impacts everyone, and we deserve an open and honest dialogue about what's really going on.
Yeah.
He doesn't mince words, even suggesting that some people in positions of power should find new jobs if they can't handle the truth.
He definitely doesn't hold back.
Yeah.
What do you make of that, his stance on those who might be obstructing progress?
It highlights his frustration, but also his commitment to pushing for answers. This isn't just about uncovering information. It's about challenging the systems and structures that have kept this information hidden for so long.
Yeah.
This is a key part of his message, and one I think a lot of people, especially those who've been following this topic closely, will find resonates deeply. He's certainly not afraid to ruffle some feathers. And honestly, you can't talk about Elizondo's insights without addressing his call for a more scientific approach to this whole phenomenon.
Right. It's not every day you hear a former intelligence official advocating for more scientists to be like Galileo.
Exactly. Elizondo talks about the need for a new generation of researchers willing to challenge established norms and push the boundaries of what we think we know.
Right.
He even criticizes the whole trust the science mantra, pointing out that true science is about questioning, researching, and testing, not blindly accepting the status quo. He's really advocating for critical thinking here, which is something I think we can all get behind.
Absolutely. It's like he's saying, don't just take my word for it. Go out and investigate for yourselves.
Right.
And that leads perfectly into his vision for the future. He talks about a 20-year timeline for uncovering more answers, but emphasizes that it's going to take rigorous scientific investigation and international collaboration.
Right. He's not interested in quick answers or sensationalized narratives.
Yeah.
Elizondo is advocating for a long-term sustained effort to understand this phenomenon, and he sees organizations like the Galileo Project, which he's involved with, as playing a crucial role in that. They're focused on using cutting-edge technology and scientific methods to collect and analyze data, which is a refreshing departure from the speculation and conjecture that often surround this topic.
Speaking of data, let's loop back to those compelling videos Elizondo described.
Yeah.
The ones he says would have everyone shrieking out if they were ever released to the public.
It's one thing to talk about sensor readings and radar tracks.
Right.
But the idea of there being visual evidence of this magnitude, evidence that's being kept under wraps,
Yeah.
it definitely fuels the imagination. He specifically mentions a 23-minute video that left him stunned 23 minutes.
Wow.
That's not a fleeting glimpse. That's a sustained observation of something truly extraordinary.
Okay, and we can't forget that other bombshell. Elizondo's comment that these events are happening every week. Every week.
I know.
It really underscores his point that this isn't about a few isolated incidents. This is a persistent, ongoing phenomenon.
It completely reframes the conversation.
Yeah.
We're not just talking about the possibility of extraterrestrial life, but the reality of a presence that's been interacting with our planet for an unknown period of time.
Right.
What does that mean for humanity? What are the implications? These are questions that Elizondo wants us to be asking ourselves.
It's like he's dropped a pebble in a pond.
Yeah.
And the ripples are still spreading outward.
That's a great analogy. And to further that, he even mentioned a near disclosure moment during a previous administration. Can you imagine being on the cusp of a new era of understanding, only to have it snatched away?
I know.
It speaks to the complexities surrounding this issue and the forces that may be working to keep this information hidden.
There's definitely a sense of frustration there, but also a determination to get those answers. One thing that really struck me was Elizondo's emphasis on the importance of international cooperation.
Absolutely. He believes this is a global issue that transcends national boundaries and political agendas.
Right.
He even brought up the UN as a potential forum for open dialogue.
That's a bold statement. It's
Yeah.
like he's saying we need to approach this as a species, not as individual nations.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And it ties into his critique of the way this topic is often treated in the media and on social media. He's not a fan of the sensationalism and the tempest in a teapot mentality that can often dominate the conversation.
Right.
He seems to really want to shift the focus from speculation and drama to evidence and critical thinking, which again circles back to his call for more scientists to get involved and for organizations like the Galileo Project to lead the charge.
And it's not just about scientists. Elizondo is calling on all of us to be more discerning, to question what we're told, and to demand evidence.
Right. That's a powerful message. But what I find really intriguing is how Elizondo brings his personal experiences into this. It's not just about data points and scientific theories. He talks about the human impact of this phenomenon, the way it shaped his own worldview.
Absolutely. Like that moment when he talked about the Nuremberg incident from hundreds of years ago.
Right.
Imagine multiple crafts of different shapes.
Wow.
Even some kind of aerial battle being reported back then.
Right.
He just shows how long this phenomenon has been with us and how our ancestors grappled with the same questions we're asking today.
And how future generations will likely be grappling with those same questions too. It's like he said, we're running a long marathon. It's a relay race, and I'm waiting for someone to pick up the baton.
Right.
He seems hopeful about the next generation taking up the challenge.
He sees a future where the truth is revealed, where the stigma surrounding this topic is finally broken. But he also acknowledges the forces that are actively working against that, the people in power who want to keep this information hidden.
And that leads us to what might be Elizondo's most significant contribution to this whole conversation, his upcoming book.
Yes.
This isn't just another UFO book. He's called it Definitive, A Point of No Return.
You can tell this book is deeply personal for him.
Yes.
It's not just about sharing what he knows. It's about cementing a legacy of truth.
And it sounds like he's holding nothing back. I mean, when he said it can never be taken away, that really resonated with me.
I know.
It's like he's laying down a marker saying, this is it. This is the truth as I know it.
It's almost like he sees this book as a turning point in the entire conversation.
Right.
Once it's out there, things can never go back to the way they were.
It's almost like he's building a fortress of facts, right?
Yeah.
One page at a time. And he's using those facts to challenge those who are hindering progress.
Yeah.
I mean, he basically told them to find new careers if they can't handle the truth.
Right.
That's a pretty bold statement.
It is, and it shows just how committed Elizondo is to this issue. He's putting his reputation on the line because he believes this information is too important to stay hidden.
You can really feel that conviction when he speaks. Yeah. And what's interesting is, like, he could be capitalizing on this moment in a much bigger way, couldn't he?
Right.
I mean, he could be on every podcast, every news show.
Right.
But he's chosen to be very deliberate with his appearances.
You're right. He's not chasing the spotlight.
Yeah.
Remember when you asked him about the Joe Rogan experience?
Yeah.
I was expecting him to announce he was about to go on the show.
Right.
But he simply said, if he asks, I'll consider it.
Wow.
He's letting his work speak for itself, which I think says a lot about his motivations.
Definitely. Okay, one last thing I wanted to touch on. Elizondo's comment about the scariest part of this whole phenomenon not being the phenomenon itself, but our reaction to it.
Yeah.
What do you make of that?
It's a point that often gets overlooked in all the excitement and speculation.
Right.
We like to think of ourselves as a rational species.
Yeah.
But history is full of examples of humanity reacting to the unknown with fear and even violence.
And this is about as unknown as it gets. Imagine if tomorrow definitive proof of extraterrestrial life just landed on the White House lawn.
Right.
Could we handle that kind of paradigm shift?
Elizondo is forcing us to confront that question. He's asking us to consider not just the possibility of life beyond Earth, but the implications for our own humanity. It's a deep dive, not just into the unknown, but into ourselves.
It makes you think, doesn't it? This entire conversation has really got me thinking. Any final thoughts before we wrap up this deep dive?
Elizondo's final message in the interview was a call to action. Be fearless in your pursuit of truth. Never stop asking questions. He wants us all to be more like Galileo, willing to challenge the status quo, demand answers, and never settle for easy explanations. He's laid out the challenge. Now it's up to us to pick up the baton.
Well said. And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive. Thanks for joining us as we explored the mind of Lou Elizondo. Until next time, keep looking up, keep asking questions, and never be afraid to dive deeper into the mysteries that surround us.